Half a river vanishes into solid rock every single day, and nobody calls it a mystery anymore. That's how normalized the underground has become, until it takes something that doesn't come back. 13 places on Earth where curiosity, ambition, or a single wrong turn led to outcomes no survival manual has ever adequately described. The paradox at the center of all of them is this: the more experience you bring underground, the more confidently you can walk into the thing that kills you. Egyptian divers knew about nitrogen narcosis. They understood the physiology, the depth thresholds, the warning signs. They dove the blue hole at Dahab anyway, and at around 56 meters, the brain begins rewriting reality. Experienced divers have turned downward toward 200 meters of open water, believing the surface was just ahead. The blue hole has claimed more lives per dive site than almost anywhere on the planet. The same cognitive betrayal happens in dry caves. Paris holds 300 kilometers of tunnels beneath its streets, the bones of 6 million people stacked in organized darkness. One man entered with a camera. The footage was recovered without him. The final frames show narrowing corridors and a flashlight losing the argument with the dark. He was never identified. In the caves of Abkhazia, South Africa, and Norway, depth records are not measured in medals. They are measured in the number of bodies recovered versus the number that stay. Krubera Cave descends beyond 2 kilometers, and the logistics of extracting an injured person from that depth exist only in theory. Kenya's Mount Elgon adds a biological dimension. Elephants mine salt from cave walls in the dark, sharing the space with bat colonies that carry Marburg virus, a hemorrhagic pathogen with no approved treatment. And then there is John Jones, 26 years old, wedged upside down in an 18-inch slot in Utah's Nutty Putty cave. 137 rescuers, 27 hours. Cardiovascular collapse made extraction medically non-viable. The cave was permanently sealed. 13 places that demonstrate a single, non-negotiable truth. Not every darkness releases what enters it. Number 13 on our list sits in the forests of northern Minnesota, where the Brule River makes a decision it cannot explain. The river splits just before a basalt ledge. 2 channels, 2 fates. The right fork drops in a clean cascade and continues south toward Lake Superior, behaving exactly as a river should. The left fork disappears. It falls into a circular pothole in the volcanic rock, and that is the last anyone ever sees of it. No outlet has ever been found. Geologists have tried. Hydrologists have tried. Curious visitors armed with dye tablets and ping-pong balls have dropped tracers into the swirling mouth of what locals call the Devil's Kettle and waited downstream at the lakeshore, at the river mouth, in the shallows, at every logical exit a body of water might choose. Nothing has surfaced, not a single marked drop. The rock beneath this part of Minnesota is roughly 1 billion years old, shaped by volcanic flows that predate almost everything recognizable on this continent. The fracture systems running through that basalt are poorly mapped and poorly understood. In theory, the water could be moving through a branching network of underground channels that never reconnect with any observable surface. That is the leading hypothesis. It is only a hypothesis. The physical inspection that might settle the question is not possible. The current is too powerful, the walls too sheer, and during high water, the force pulling toward that opening is not something you approach casually. What makes the place genuinely strange is how ordinary it looks. Wooded trails, autumn color on the ridgeline, the sound of moving water. A state park with a parking lot and interpretive signs. Nothing signals that a few steps away, something is happening that the science of hydrology cannot fully account for. Water always goes somewhere. That has always been findable, traceable, measurable. Here it is not. We open our countdown with a place that does not threaten, does not destroy, does not perform. It simply swallows and says nothing. That silence, patient, total, indifferent, is exactly the register we will need as we move deeper into this list. Number 12 on our list is a hole in the ground that smells like death, sits in one of the most remote deserts on Earth, and was first measured by scientists less than 4 years ago. The Well of Barhout, located in Yemen's Al-Mahra desert, is roughly 30 meters across and drops straight down for about 112 meters. And for most of recorded history, no one knew exactly how deep it went because no one was willing to go in. That reluctance was not superstition for its own sake. Bedouin communities in the region had long described a persistent, heavy odor rising from the opening, something they compared to the smell of death or of a world beyond this one. They named the place Bir Barhout, the Well of Hell, or the Prison of the Jinn, where, according to local belief, the souls of non-believers and evil spirits are held captive. The name stuck because the explanation felt earned. In August 2021, a team from the Oman Cave Exploration Team made the first documented descent to the bottom. What they found explains why the smell is real, even if the mythology is metaphor. The floor was layered with the bones of animals and birds that had fallen in and could not escape. The walls and ground were covered with thousands of live snakes. The team also documented unidentified white objects and unusual mineral deposits whose origin has not yet been determined. The geological explanation is straightforward. Barhout is a karst sinkhole formed when underground water slowly dissolves limestone bedrock until the surface above collapses. But the paradox is that the rational explanation doesn't fully close the case. The exact age of the formation is unknown. The complete underground system remains unmapped. Yemen's ongoing armed conflict has made follow-up scientific expeditions essentially impossible. So, the Well of Barhout stays frozen mid-investigation, a 30-meter mouth open to the sky, exhaling something unclassified in a desert where the nearest help is very far away. It doesn't kill explorers dramatically, it just exists and waits, and that turns out to be enough. 6 million people are buried beneath Paris, and most of them were moved there on purpose. That single fact reframes everything you think you know about one of the world's most visited cities. Under its cafes, its boulevards, its cathedral foundations, nearly 300 kilometers of tunnels run through the dark, unmapped, officially forbidden, and very much occupied. Not by the living, mostly, but not entirely by the dead either. The catacombs exist because 18th century Paris faced a crisis that had nothing romantic about it. Its cemeteries were overflowing to the point of causing epidemics. The solution was administrative and brutal. Excavate the old limestone quarries already honeycombing the subsoil and transfer the bones there. Workers stacked skulls and femurs into precise ornamental patterns along the gallery walls. The result was the largest subterranean repository of human remains on the planet. What tourists see today is a carefully managed sliver of the whole system, less than a fraction of the nearly 300 kilometers that extend in every direction beneath the city. The rest is sealed, patrolled by a dedicated police unit Parisians call the Cataflics, and legally off-limits. The ban has not reduced interest. Cataphiles, the name given to those who explore the forbidden sections, enter through hidden manholes, drainage shafts, and bricked-up passages. They hold parties down there. They sleep among bones. Some do not come back. In 2004, a video camera was recovered inside one of the tunnels. The footage showed an unidentified man filming himself as he walked, confident at first, then slowing, then running, gasping, the stone walls closing in on every side of the frame. The recording ends without explanation. The man was never identified. He is listed as missing. Number 11 on this list is Paris. and the city beneath it that has been quietly collecting people for 3 centuries. The fingers give it away. Divers recovered from Cenote Esqueleto, known to the cave diving community as the Temple of Doom, are often found with the bones of their fingertips exposed, worn through by stone. They were alive when they lost their way. They were alive when they searched the rock ceiling in the dark for an opening that wasn't there. That is what makes this place, rated number 10 among the world's most dangerous dive sites, something beyond merely lethal. Located in Tulum on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Cenote Esqueleto sits above one of the largest underwater cave systems on Earth. Thousands of sinkholes puncture the limestone plateau, all connected by a vast network of submerged corridors and flooded chambers running beneath the jungle. The Maya had a name for where these passages led: Xibalba, the underworld. The divers who named this particular cenote the Temple of Doom were not being dramatic. From the surface, the water is clear, turquoise, almost tropical in its openness. Sunlight drops in clean shafts through a circular opening in the ceiling. Stalactites frame the corridors like architecture. Nothing about the visual experience suggests danger. That is the mechanism. At depth, a layer of fresh water meets the salt water below in a boundary called the halocline. The optical distortion it creates is immediate and total. The environment appears to rotate. Vertical orientation collapses, and the swimmer can no longer gauge distance to the surface or the floor. Step away from that shaft of light, and there is complete darkness. The side passages are too narrow to turn around in. There is no instinctive path out. This is a place where beauty and death are not opposites. They are indistinguishable. That specific quality, experts argue, is what separates Esqueleto from other hazardous dive sites. It does not repel, it invites. And then, in Texas, in the small town of Wimberley, another body of water waits with the same blue, the same stillness, and 9 confirmed deaths of its own. Jacob's Well. Jacob's Well has killed at least 9 divers, and almost every one of them could see the bottom before they went in. That is the central contradiction of this place, and it is what makes it number 9 on our list. Sitting in the Texas hill country outside Wimberley, the spring looks like something designed to reassure you. A perfect circular opening about 4 meters across, crystal blue water, green grass around the rim. The clarity is not a sign of safety, it is the disguise. The artesian spring has fed this opening for thousands of years, and for most of that time, people swam here without incident, because most of them never went deeper than the surface pool. The danger begins at 10 meters down, where the vertical shaft opens into a branching network of underwater caves. 4 main chambers extend beyond that point, dropping to depths greater than 30 meters. The passages connecting those chambers are tight enough that cave divers must remove their air tanks and push the equipment ahead of them as they squeeze through. This is not a technical inconvenience. It is the mechanism of a trap. Silt covers the floor of every passage. The lightest fin kick, the slightest contact with a wall, and that silt rises in a cloud that eliminates visibility within seconds. A diver who is navigating a known route is suddenly unable to see their hand in front of their face. Disorientation follows almost instantly, because in total darkness with no visual reference, the human body cannot reliably locate up. The combination of constricted passages and instant blackout has proven lethal regardless of experience level. Seasoned divers have died here alongside beginners, which is why authorities have imposed access restrictions and posted warnings repeatedly over the years. The warnings have not stopped the deaths. They rarely do when the place looks this harmless. Jacob's Well is a precise illustration of why beauty functions as camouflage and why the most dangerous environments are the ones that look the least like danger. A cave can be perfectly safe and almost certainly fatal at the same time. Kitum Cave, on the slopes of Mount Elgon in western Kenya, sits at roughly 8,000 feet above sea level and has been hollowed out over thousands of years. Not by water, not by geological force, but by elephants. Whole family groups navigate the pitch-black interior by touch, scraping the soft volcanic tough walls with their tusks to extract mineral salts. The cave is, functionally, an elephant-made mine. Number 8 on our list. That detail alone would make Kitum remarkable. But the cave holds a second story, and it is considerably darker. The ceiling is packed with dense colonies of Egyptian fruit bats, tens of thousands of individuals, and the floor beneath them is deep with accumulated guano. The air inside is not simply humid or stale. It carries suspended particles, dust, aerosolized organic matter, microbial content that no visitor can see or smell or choose to avoid. In 1980, a French engineer named Charles Monet spent time in the cave. Within days, he was dead in a Nairobi hospital, his internal organs destroyed by Marburg hemorrhagic fever. In 1987, a Danish teenager visited Kitum and died from the same virus. American military virologists investigated both deaths. Both times, the probable source was the cave's air itself, something breathed in during what must have seemed like an ordinary afternoon. The natural reservoir of the Marburg virus has never been officially confirmed, though bats remain the primary suspects. The mechanism here requires no contact, no wound, no awareness. You walk in, you breathe. Days later, the virus declares itself. Kitum demands nothing from you except your presence. If death by invisible airborne pathogen feels abstract, the location coming next on this list offers something entirely more immediate. Cold water, total darkness, and no way out. Number 7 on our list. Blue Hole Dahab, Egypt. Here's the uncomfortable truth. This place doesn't look dangerous. That's exactly what makes it deadly. The Blue Hole sits just a short walk from the beachfront cafes of Dahab, a relaxed resort town on Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. It's a near-perfect circle, roughly 60 meters across, dropping straight down past 100 meters. From above, the water is a deep, almost unnatural blue, rimmed with coral. It looks like the kind of place you'd photograph, not fear. And yet more people have died here than at almost any other dive site on Earth. Official records count over 100 fatalities. Local dive instructors put the real number in the hundreds. Many bodies were never brought up. The accessibility is part of the equation. No boat required, no remote expedition. Thousands of divers arrive in Dahab every year and walk straight to the edge. That ease of access draws people who aren't ready. Freedivers who've trained in pools, scuba divers who underestimate what 60 meters of seawater does to the human brain. Because that's the mechanism. At around 56 to 60 meters, there's a tunnel called the Arch, connecting the Blue Hole to open water. It's the feature everyone wants to pass through. And at that depth, nitrogen under pressure begins to interfere with cognition, a condition called nitrogen narcosis. Euphoria sets in, judgment goes. A diver can feel completely fine while losing the ability to make decisions or control their own body. The danger is invisible from the inside. In April 2001, Israeli freediving instructor Yuri Lipsky descended with a helmet camera. The footage survived. It shows him going deeper, movements slowing, becoming purposeless, until his body reaches the bottom at 113 meters. He did not survive. That video spread across the internet and became one of the most studied records of what nitrogen narcosis actually looks like in a real human being. No storms, no predators, no sudden collapse. The Blue Hole kills through silence, beauty, and the particular overconfidence of people who have never been proven wrong, until they are. Next, we leave warm water entirely. Number 8 takes us inland and upward, into the mountain cold of Abkhazia. The most dangerous place a human being has ever voluntarily entered is not a battlefield or a burning building. It is a hole in the ground in Abkhazia, and it goes down 2,199 meters. Krubera-Voronya Cave, carved into the Arabica Massif, held the title of the world's deepest cave for years. It ranks 6th among the most extreme places humanity has dared to reach. The reason it is so unforgiving comes down to physics and time. A descent does not take hours, it takes weeks. Teams establish underground camps at multiple levels, sleeping in waterlogged conditions near freezing, with no natural light and no margin for error. Every meter gained downward is a meter that must eventually be reversed through the same flooded sumps, the same vertical shafts, the same narrow stone throats where divers push through in complete darkness with scuba gear, trusting that the passage opens on the other side. Cavers who have reached the lower sections describe something they call the pull of the void, a psychological state that emerges at extreme depth, characterized by an almost irrational compulsion to keep descending, even when rational judgment says stop. The phenomenon is poorly understood by science, but consistently reported by experienced explorers who do not treat it lightly. The arithmetic of rescue at this depth is brutal. An injury or loss of consciousness below 1,500 meters leaves a team with no realistic options. Sumps, shafts, distances, and timelines combine to make extraction a technical impossibility by current standards. Krubera-Voronya is, in the most literal sense, the outer limit of human penetration into solid rock. It no longer holds the depth record. That belongs to Veryovkina Cave, its neighbour in the same massif, which cuts deeper still. And in 2021, Veryovkina came close to swallowing an entire expedition alive. The most dangerous thing about Bushman's Hole is how inviting it looks. The water is clear, cold, and still. There are no narrow passages, no submerged tunnels to navigate, just an open vertical shaft dropping through the semi-arid veld of South Africa's Northern Cape province, straight down for 282 meters. That makes it the deepest known freshwater cave on Earth, an official scientific record. And it has killed people who had no business dying there. Number 5 on our list. In 1994, 18-year-old Dion Dreyer descended into Boesmanskat, the name Afrikaans speakers use, and never came back. His body came to rest at roughly 270 meters, held in water so cold and sterile that decomposition barely progressed. For 10 years he remained there. In 2004, Australian technical diver Dave Shaw, a man who held world records for deep diving, made the deliberate choice to go down and bring Dreyer home. At 270 meters, Shaw filmed the site with a camera, began rigging a recovery bag around the body, and became entangled in his own lines. He did not surface. Days later, both bodies rose together. The camera had recorded everything. The paradox of Bushman's Hole is that its dangers are entirely invisible from above. No labyrinth traps you, no collapsing rock seals the exit. What kills here is physics. Nitrogen narcosis eroding judgment, oxygen toxicity striking without warning, cold draining muscle function, and the simple arithmetic of distance. 282 meters of water between a diver in trouble and anyone who might help. Even the most experienced technical divers in the world have died here, not recklessly, but while attempting something decent. That is what makes this place number 5. Number 4 on our list is a cave where you have to cut a hole in the ice just to get inside. And that is the least dangerous part of the dive.
Plura Cave, buried beneath a frozen lake in the Norwegian mountain range of Hemnefjellet, sits just south of the Arctic Circle and holds the distinction of being one of the deepest and most extensive underwater cave systems in all of Scandinavia. The water temperature inside holds steady at just above freezing, never climbing past 2 degrees Celsius, regardless of season. There is no thermocline, no summer reprieve, no version of this cave that is anything other than relentlessly cold.
In February 2014, 5 Finnish technical divers arrived here with a plan to push the system to a depth of around 130 meters. These were not beginners. Collectively, they carried hundreds of hours of cave diving experience. But experience does not change the physics of what happens at depth. At 130 meters, the gas mixtures are calculated to the minute. The decompression obligations are rigid and binding. A diver cannot simply surface when something goes wrong. The ascent protocol locks you in place for hours. The cave decides when you leave. At depth, Juha Heinonen became wedged in a constriction in the rock. The walls closed in, the darkness was total, the temperature was near zero. He could not be freed. A second diver died attempting the rescue. The 3 survivors then faced an impossible arithmetic: ascend immediately and die from gas embolism, or begin the mandatory decompression and remain in the cave for hours, knowing their companions were dead somewhere in the darkness below them. They stayed under the ice for more than 8 hours. What happened afterward is where Plura's story becomes something harder to categorize. The survivors later returned to the cave in violation of Norwegian law to recover their friends' bodies. Illegal by every statutory measure, and yet the act reveals something precise about what this kind of experience does to people. The cave does not release you cleanly. Plura is not mysterious. It is not dramatic in any theatrical sense. It is simply a place where the margin for error is zero, and the window to correct a mistake does not exist. That quiet, mechanical absoluteness is what separates it from caves with louder reputations. Up next, a place where the danger is not cold water or narrow rock. It is something alive in the dark. Number 3 on our list is a cave that was considered safe. That is precisely what makes it so haunting. Mossdale Caverns, buried beneath the limestone plateau of Greater Wharfdale in North Yorkshire, had been explored dozens of times before June 24, 1967. Local caving clubs knew its passages well. 6 experienced cavers entered that morning, with every reason to expect a routine expedition into the system's deeper galleries. The paradox of Mossdale is this: the cave itself did not change. What changed was the sky above it. While the group worked their way through the low crawls and sump-like passages that define the system, a summer storm broke over the plateau. Not an unusual event for Yorkshire, but the karst beneath was already saturated, and when rain has nowhere to soak, it moves in the only direction available. Within minutes, passages that cavers had squeezed through on the way in, some no wider than 30 centimeters across, became pressurized pipes carrying a surge of floodwater inward and downward. There was no alarm. There was no warning at the surface before the group had already committed to the deeper sections. All 6 were lost. The rescue effort that followed lasted several days. Pumping teams worked to lower water levels, but the volume entering the system overwhelmed every attempt. When conditions finally allowed rescuers to push deeper, they found the bodies. What came next was a decision with no good answer. The passages were too narrow to allow any form of recovery. Removing the dead was physically impossible. Authorities and the families of the 6 reached an agreement that has no real parallel in British caving history. Mossdale Caverns would be permanently sealed. Concrete was poured across the entrance. It remains sealed today. The 6 cavers are still inside. What Mossdale exposes is a category of risk that experience alone cannot address. Surface weather can transform a familiar route into a fatal trap in less time than it takes to retreat. The danger is not underground. It forms above, invisibly, and arrives before any warning is possible. Skill, preparation, and local knowledge counted for nothing against a rainstorm that happened while the wrong people were in the wrong place. Next on our list, Norway's Plura cave system saw a 2014 dive go catastrophically wrong in a different way.
leaving survivors with an impossible choice between self-preservation and refusing to leave their friends behind.
The most dangerous part of Veryovkina Cave isn't the depth, it's the rain. Number 2 on our list, Veryovkina holds the title of deepest cave on Earth since 2012, plunging 2,212 meters into the karst massif of Arabica in Abkhazia. That number alone commands respect. But the real threat underground isn't the distance down, it's what the mountain does with ordinary weather. In the summer of 2021, a team of seasoned cavers from Moscow's Perovo Club was operating below the 1-kilometer mark. On the surface, a summer storm passed through. Brief, unremarkable by mountain standards. Nobody thought much of it. The problem is that karst limestone doesn't absorb water the way soil does. It channels it. Every crack, every shaft, every vertical passage becomes a drain pipe, and those drain pipes were, at that moment, the same rope lines where the cavers were hanging. The water arrived with no warning, freezing cold, moving fast, generating enough hydraulic pressure to pin a person against a wall and hold them there. Several cavers were injured while still on their ropes. There was nowhere to retreat. The cave offers no safe horizontal shelves at those depths, no chambers that stay dry when the mountain above is shedding water. Rescue teams outside couldn't enter for nearly a week, waiting for water levels to drop enough that the rigging became passable again. Everyone survived, but survival here was a product of luck and endurance, not of any designed safety margin. Veryovkina claimed the depth record from its neighbor, Krubera-Voronya Cave, also in Abkhazia and the same mountain system, which reaches 2,199 meters. For years, Krubera held the title. Then Veryovkina took it. And Krubera has its own story, one about what happens when a rescue operation stops being logistically difficult and starts being geometrically impossible. A cave killed a man not by being deep, dark, or unexplored, but by being just slightly too narrow in exactly the wrong place. Nutty Putty Cave, located in Utah County, Utah, was the opposite of a legendary underground mystery. It was a family-friendly limestone system less than an hour from Salt Lake City, frequented by students, church groups, and weekend adventurers. Its reputation was built on approachability. That reputation is precisely what made it deadly. On November 24, 2009, 26-year-old medical student John Edward Jones entered the cave with family members. At some point in the maze of tight, winding passages, he turned into a side tunnel called the Christmas Gift, a dead-end slot approximately 45 centimeters wide and 25 centimeters tall. He slipped in head first, angled at roughly 70 degrees downward. The rock held him instantly. Every movement tightened the pressure of the stone against his chest. The inverted position forced blood toward his head and made each breath a deliberate, exhausting effort. 137 rescue personnel responded over the next 27 hours. They rigged a mechanical pulley system designed to extract him by force. At one critical point, it worked. Jones moved 30 centimeters towards safety. Then the rope snapped. No subsequent attempt moved him further. His heart gave out inside the rock, overwhelmed by the cardiovascular strain of prolonged inversion. With no safe method of extraction, removing him would have required breaking apart the cave in ways that could have killed rescuers. Authorities made the irreversible call. The entrance was sealed with an explosion and filled with concrete. Nutty Putty Cave became John Edward Jones's permanent tomb. This is number 1 on our list, not because of scale, not because of dramatic depth or exotic location, but because it confronts us with something deeply uncomfortable. That an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, a wrong turn in a well-known cave, and 45 centimeters of limestone can outmatch an entire rescue operation. A man spent 27 hours upside down underground, and 137 people couldn't pull him out alive. That's not a metaphor for anything. That's Utah, that's a narrow slot in the rock, and that's what this list is about. 13 locations where the planet stops pretending to be safe. The paradox is this: most of these places are beautiful. A waterfall that swallows a river whole and leaves no trace downstream. A crystal-clear spring in Texas, so blue it looks edited, sitting above 9 confirmed graves. A sinkhole off the Egyptian coast that has collected hundreds of victims over the decades, partly because the geometry of the hole itself makes escape nearly impossible once you're inside. The reason these places keep claiming lives isn't ignorance. People know. They go anyway, because the danger isn't visible, or because confidence fills the gap where information should be. Paris has 6 million dead beneath its streets, and living people still get lost in those tunnels and don't come back. A Kenyan cave routes bat migration directly through human breathing space, which is how viruses find new hosts. In South Africa, a dive site sent 2 men down together, one already dead from a previous dive, one alive, and the water returned both of them the same way. A Norwegian ice cave demanded 8 hours submerged and a collective decision to wait rather than panic, which is the only reason anyone surfaced. 2 Georgian pits exceed 2 kilometers in depth, and rescue teams cannot physically reach accident victims in time. 6 people died in Yorkshire caves in a single wet summer. The Earth holds its secrets close. Not all of them come back up. Subscribe if this list stays with you, and watch the rest of the series. There are more places ahead that you probably shouldn't visit.